Hey. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Yep, I'm only reading one chapter tonight, but it's a long one. Boy, is it a long one. Oh, my goodness. How's your day been? You still got the girls? You still got all the chitlins? Oh, wow. I was wondering what happened to you. Well, that's good. How's your brother doing? Hey, Valerie. Valerie, I just sent you a message. Messenger where we were talking before. I just told you that if anybody's having a hard, if anybody messages you having a hard time getting on, tell them to tap on on the video just once. So tap once, and the chat should pop up. Fancy. Wow. My nighttime meds before I forget. Oh, have you guys? Hello, Miss Shirley. Have you guys tried these yet? Oh my gosh! I think I made half the bag today. They're so good. Oh yeah. Vincy, I don't know why I'm freezing. I don't know what's going on. And it only freezes during the live. It doesn't do that for the actual video, so I don't know. They're new and they're good. Oh Lord, Valerie, why do you want to go do that? Somebody else used to do that to me. Was it Jackie? Somebody else used to put me up on their TV. I don't remember who it was. Miss Shirley, you doing all right today? Good. All right, one more minute. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Ooh, I love reading Jay Morgan stuff. You guys always come. He's got the best fan base for just an old country boy from the South. All right, let's get started. Jay Morgan requested that I read chapter 24, because apparently that's where all the nasty starts. And it's been so long since I read read this book that I'm going to swing it on the voices. I'm trying to remember who was who. So, all right, chapter 24. Can y'all hear me over the music, or is the music too loud? Vincy, you're my hearing anybody though, but Vincy's usually the one that tells me. All right, glasses. Alrighty, chapter 24. She came to him later that night while he slept. Her dark form hovered over his prostrate body like a shadowy wraith floating in a sinister mist. "Hello, brother dear," she said, her lecherous smile exposing the razor-sharp canines. "Terry!" he cried hoarsely. How had she gotten in? They'd done everything they could think of to vampire-proof Seth's house. Crosses on the windows and doors, roses in every room. But here she was, and here he lay helpless. He tried to move, but no matter the effort, he seemed paralyzed. He felt her weight on the bed. "Hey, Carly." sister. You let them do this to me. Her eyes glowed red as she crawled atop him like a creeping spider. She straddled his waist. Her cold hands caressed his chest. It's your fault I'm like this now. So, you will be my first. No, he screamed. Seth, help me, Seth. Scream all you want. It won't do you any good, she whispered calmly, moving her face closer to his. No one can hear you. No one can save you. She put her lips to his ear and breathed heavily into it. Just like you couldn't save me. He felt his skin crawl as the tip of her tongue probed suggestively into it and worked around the inner lobe. Oh, God, this can't be happening. No! He tossed his head feverishly back and forth. His body was covered in sweat. It was all slipping. Take his time changing. All right, there we go. Slipping away. My Kindle app's acting up. Desperate, he found himself begging. Please, Terry, don't. Oh, God, it's me, Kurt. I'm your brother. You were my brother. Her cold breath was on his face. I have a new family now, and they care enough about me to protect me and keep me safe, which you can't do. Her lips pressed against his. Her tongue entered his mouth. It explored his wicked skill. His blood froze at the shock of it. His stomach turned, and he felt the vomit rise. She purred. Do you like that, brother? Am I as good as that little slut you been screwing? Stop it, he screamed, desperation making his voice pitch high. Her only answer was to shift her weight and lift her skirt. When she lowered herself back down, he was appalled to feel skin against skin. While he'd slept in the nude since his freshman days in college, the fact his sister had no panties on came as a disgusting shock. The wetness she was now pressed between their flesh only intensified the horror. But no words could describe the emotions as he felt his own body betray him, his manhood thickening. An erection quickly swelling as she wantonly rubbed herself against it. For a moment he was paralyzed mentally, the shock of it too much to comprehend. God, no, please, not like this. Terry, please. He finally found words again, pleading desperately, even as he felt her nudge him into position, his head against the velvety soft flesh of her womanhood. You're sick. Please don't do this. Let me help you, please. In his mind, he damned Nick LaRoe to the deepest pits of hell for what he'd done to his sister, for turning her into the obscene, unholy creature before him. He cursed himself for his failure to prevent it. He cursed his body for succumbing to her touch. Damn it, why couldn't he move? She looked down upon him, her eyes heavy-lidded, her voice husky with desire. Oh, brother dear, do you think I want your help? There's only one thing I want from you. With those words, she thrust herself fiercely down onto him, and both brother and sister's eyes bulged at the sensation of the penetration. She gasped, her breath taken, but as she began to adjust, She moaned out her pleasure, taunting Kurt as she did. Oh, oh, yes. She gave him a wicked leer as she mocked. Feel good, brother? Stop it, he yelled out in frustration, but his own resistance was growing weaker, for she rode him with surprising skill. His senses were dulling, his defenses crumbling, and he found himself allowing enjoyment and pleasure to slowly overrun them. Oh, fuck, I'm going to hell. There's no coming back from this. Nick LaRoe would win in every way. He would not only have Kurt's own sister take him out, but he would defile them both in the basest of ways in doing it. It wasn't enough to stick the knife in. He had to twist it cruelly and profanely. She was kissing him again, her tongue whirling with his as her breath grew quicker and quicker. He felt his own breath grow rapid as the geyser within him began to build pressure. And then she was coming. Yes! Yes! Oh, God, yes! She cried out, her hot juices coating him with her pleasure. He felt himself start to climax too, and he looked up into her face. The beautiful softness was gone. The reptilian look of a viper was there. Where his sister had been sat a horrific, demonic creature, a terrifying succubus. The pupils of the red eyes were slit like those of a cat. The nose had turned up and went flat, the large nostrils flaring, taking in the scent of his fear. In addition, the mouth. It was way out of proportion, too big for her face. Razor-sharp fangs dripped foul-smelling saliva. Abject horror and revulsion filled him. She laughed at the terror in his eyes, the laugh of the cruel and merciless. Suddenly, the fangs rocketed towards his throat. He screamed as they pierced his skin. No! He felt his body being buffeted by an earthquake. Light exploded in bright fireworks around him. He was falling through a black hole, an endless void. Suddenly he was awake, lying in his bed. The sheets were soaked with the sweat of his unconscious ordeal. Seth was standing above him, shaking him. Whoa, buddy, he was saying. Wake up. Oh, shit, man. Kurt came awake, wild-eyed and skittish. His chest was heaving. He grabbed his friend's arm for reassurance. Am I glad to see you? Bad dream? Seth asked, a question he already knew the answer to. The worst. Kurt rubbed his wet brow. Well, you're all right now. Seth patted his shoulder. What time is it? Kurt sat up. Seth glanced at his watch. About 3:30. Kurt shook his head. I'm exhausted, but I'm afraid to go back to sleep. I'm living a nightmare when I'm awake, and now I dream them when I go to sleep. Well, we got to get some rest. Seth knew exactly where he was coming from. Big day again tomorrow. Yeah, I guess you're right. Kurt didn't sound convinced. He lay back on his pillow. With a sigh, he added, I wonder what she's doing now. Seth stood in the doorway and looked back. He wanted to say something reassuring, but didn't. What could he say? There was no need to pump sunshine up anybody's skirts. They all knew the reality they faced. Get some sleep, he said simply before turning off the lights and leaving the room. But Kurt was wide-eyed. He rolled over onto his side to stare at the luminescent face of the alarm clock, the numbers changing every minute, flicking the night away. Dawn would find him in the same wide-eyed state. While Kurt was staring at the clock, Terry found herself in the midst of what was obviously an unwelcome reunion as far as Nick was concerned. Go dogs. Oh, gotta show you this real quick, just because it's Jay Morgan's. Look what my niece got me. She went to Build a Bear and built me a Georgia bear. Yeah. When it comes football season, Jay Morgan and I are enemies. Hey, Miss Maggie, how are you? Welcome to the crazy. And she put some kind of strawberry scent on it because I call her Strawberry, so yeah, it smells like strawberries. Let's see. They'd gotten dressed and been taken downstairs. Although no one had said anything to the point, it appeared Nick was now under some kind of house arrest. He sat quietly in his old easy chair by the fireplace, glaring at his vampire kindred. Terry was now attired in some of Rose's old clothes. The blonde vampire had given her an old cotton print dress, but apparently Rose didn't believe in undergarments. No bra or panties had been offered. She felt extremely uncomfortable in the group setting without them. Even a pair of shoes would have helped. However, she got the impression her comfort and self-consciousness were of little concern to Rose or any of the others at the moment. So far, none of them had taken much notice of her. They'd seemed preoccupied with whatever infraction Nick had committed. She was on the outside looking in, but something told her if she made a move to leave, they would take notice rather quickly. It was almost amusing how they seemed to be acting like children. One had been bad and run away from home. He had been caught. Another had tattled and was now relishing in his downfall. And they were all waiting on Mama to straighten out the whole ordeal. Rose sat on the old couch, casually sipping a glass of wine. Every now and then she had cast a taunting smile at Nick. Jonathan stood behind the couch, as if awaiting an order from her in case Nick might try something. In the corner behind Nick, Nimrod lingered, staying close to his protector. His fate was intertwined with his sponsor. If things went bad for Nick, it would be bad for him too. The strange woman Natasha was nowhere to be seen. She disappeared soon after arrival. That bothered Terry. She seemed the kind of person you wanted in your line of sight at all times, like a copperhead. It is always the one you don't see that bites you. She looked at Nick and wondered what he was thinking. His shoulders slumped as he sat low in the chair, his eyes fixed on Rose with a hatred in them that caused her to shiver. She wondered what would happen to him. What would happen to her? If Terry had been more experienced in the power, she would have simply read Nick's mind and found him venting his anger by telepathically abusing Rose. "You bitch," he shot at her. "You betrayed me." "The coven first," she retorted. "You broke the blood oath. You are the traitor. You betrayed the coven first." "Fuck the coven. Fuck the oath. It makes us no more than supernatural gangsters." "Watch yourself, Nick LaRoe." Her eyes grew dangerously narrow. "You speak without thinking. Has that little bitch over there dulled your senses to the point that you would dig your own grave?" Alright, I gotta change glasses. These keep sliding and it bugs me. "You leave her out of this. She is not to blame for the way I feel." "Oh, she isn't. You would see us dead to have her?" "Your family." "I only wanted to bring her into our family." The word made him wrinkle his face in disgust. "Your jealousy destroyed what we had." "What do you expect? Ever since we've been here, you've treated me like shit." Her eyes softened a little. "Maybe I'm not your lover anymore, but does that mean you have to stop loving me?" The tone in her projection made Nick take notice. It'd been 20 years since he had heard it. It was the wide-eyed, vulnerable girl Rose had once been. Was it possible somewhere deep inside her a little bit of what once had been could still be there, buried beneath layers of hate and evil, struggling to get out? He looked into her eyes. "I never meant to hurt you. We just went down separate roads." She wanted to say something, her lips parting slightly, but the sound of the front door opening caused everyone to start. They looked to see Natasha enter, followed by a large, muscular Italian in a custom-made suit. Looks like a hitman, Terry thought. Tony, she heard Nick's words in her head. Natasha's familiar, and her playmate. Used to be hired muscle for the mob and a two-bit pimp. Likes to bully the other familiars in the coven. Real asshole. She looked the man over. He wore a sadistic grin, the kind people who delight in torturing animals have. His jet black hair was heavily oiled and brushed back. The dark eyes were unmerciful. The silk shirt he wore was unbuttoned halfway. Gold chains hung around his neck. Large diamond rings and a Rolex adorned his meat cleaver hands. He looked like he stepped right off the set of a Coppola movie. Well, 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 Natasha sauntered into the room. What an interesting little place. I can see why you left Chicago, Nick, she sneered sarcastically at Terry. This place has so much to offer. She slid into the chair across from Nick and crossed her perfect legs elegantly. Tony brought her a glass of wine and then took a position beside her. Terry caught him throwing a leer at her that made her blood freeze. Nick, she said nervously. Don't worry. He will not dare touch you, no matter how big he is. He is still just a mortal. My dear, Natasha chuckled in amusement. No one wants to hurt you. You are one of us now. Family. She's been listening to me, Terry thought. She felt totally naked now. We keep no secrets, Natasha continued. We love one another, support each other, protect the weak. She turned to Nick. And we work out our problems among ourselves. Nick laughed sarcastically. Cut the bullshit, Natasha. Leave her out of this. This is between us. Oh, but she is very much a part of this, Natasha retorted. You turned her. She has the power. She will return with us and become part of the coven. He stood up and gestured in frustration. Immediately, Jonathan stepped forward, ready if he tried anything. Can you not just leave us be? Take Rose and Jonathan if they want to go back. I want no part of you anymore. You insolent malcontent. Natasha's teeth clenched. Years of my wisdom and still the heart of a fool. She pointed a long finger. Not on your eternal life, Nicholas. You have a lot to answer for. Nick wanted to continue. Instead, he threw himself back into his chair. Terry wondered what power this woman held over these supernatural beings that they dared not challenge her. She didn't want to find out. Now, Natasha looked smug. She had obviously put Nick in his place. She turned back to Terry, who felt as if Satan himself had turned his eyes upon her. Stand up, girl, she said to her. When Terry hesitated, she smiled sweetly and motioned with her hand. Go on, it's all right. Hesitantly, Terry stood. Now, turn around, Natasha commanded, making a twirling motion with her index finger pointed downward. Terry obeyed. The vampire queen shrugged. Doesn't seem like anything special to me. She turned to Rose. Does she impress you, Rose, my dear? Never did. Rose tossed her hair and tried to look disinterested in the whole affair. The girl had caused her more than enough trouble. The sooner she was done with this business, the better. She felt Nick's eyes burning their anger into her. There would be no mending things now. Natasha was continuing her appraisal. Okay, looks. Average figure. You chose this over our darling Rose here? No wonder she was insulted when you went slumming. Amazing! Rose and Terry, for once, both felt the same. Both now looked as if they wanted to crawl into a hole. And no shoes? Really, Nicholas? Has the South not progressed any since we were last down here? You threatened the safety of your kindred and sacrificed one of your own for this peasant girl. So self-righteous. Nick's face turned disdainful. You forget I know you better than any of these others. You would sacrifice the whole coven if you thought it would help you. Dangerous words, Nicholas. Her eyes grew narrow. Don't say anything you might regret. Oh, what are you going to do to me? He stood again defiantly. Kill me? That breaks the oath, Natasha. Exile me? Hell, that is what I want. He mocked her with a smile. Your options are rather limited. She rose to her feet, a line stretching before the hunt. I do not have to lay a hand on you, my dear boy. I can hurt you in other ways. She nodded to Tony, who cast a sly glance at Terry and wheeled around toward the door. Nick looked puzzled. He had tried to scan Natasha's thoughts, but she was ready for him. You are not quick enough, my boy. Will you ever learn? I am your maker. I will always be a step ahead. What are you up to? He asked aloud. His voice boomed like a thunderclap in the silent room. She laughed. Like the evil queen in some twisted fairy tale, Terry thought. Only this time it was real. Oh, Nicholas. Natasha shook her head. I'm only trying to be hospitable to your little girlfriend. They heard the door open. Tony re-entered the room. Over his shoulder, much to Terry's horror, he carried a little girl, bound and gagged. You must be famished, darling. Natasha smiled sweetly, and Terry realized with horror and revulsion she was talking to her. Tony dumped the child on the floor before her. Dinner is served. No! Terry and Nick screamed in unison. He moved to intervene, but Jonathan had anticipated the reaction and had him instantly. Let me go! Don't be stupid, man. Jonathan struggled, but held his ground. You're in enough trouble. Terry jumped up and backed away. Tony only pushed the little girl toward her. She was pretty, about 6 or 7, Terry estimated. She was still in the pink cotton pajamas she'd been wearing when Tony had snatched her from her bed. She had blonde hair tied up in pigtails and big blue eyes. It was the eyes that held Terry. Wide, innocent eyes filled with terror. Eyes that seemed to scream, help me, please. I don't understand. Why is this happening to me? Was I bad? No, Terry thought. You weren't bad, but the monsters under your bed got you anyway. Go ahead, child. Natasha's voice was soft and hypnotic. Quench your thirst. If you don't, it will only grow worse. No! You're a monster! No, a monster is what becomes of novices who fight the urge to feed too long. After a while, they just snap. Their minds go and they feed. Oh yes, like animals. That is what they become. Mindless dogs. Or did your precious Nick leave that part out? She backed away slowly, but Tony continued to press forward with the intended victim. Don't fight it. Again, that voice, as evil as it was, there was reassurance in it, dangerous to be heard. Release the old nature, accept the new. Be reborn. I won't be a murderer. Terry felt the hot tears of rage and frustration. Oh, Natasha seemed slightly amused. And what do you think you would become? Did you really think you could live forever with your dream lover and not pay a price? She laughed in disbelief. Are you really that naive? Terry looked to each of the others. Rose sat silently. She showed no emotion on her face. She turned away as her eyes met Terry's. She didn't approve of all this. This was not how a first time should be. It should be enjoyable, a memorable moment, not one of coercion. Jonathan held the still, struggling Nick. The ex-street tough had Nick's arms and shoulders pulled back and pinned behind him by his own, which were interlocked in a vice-like grip around his captive's upper arms. In doing so, he kept Nick's balance off as all his weight was now back of center and controlled by Jonathan. Her back hit the wall. Tony continued to press. The child had tears rolling down her cheeks. Her tender mouth was gagged. One of her lips busted from Tony's rough handling. Her eyes sought Terry's, but Terry could not look into them. The shame of it all was too much for her. But she could hear. She could hear the girl's heartbeat, pounding the adrenaline-filled blood through her arteries. Yes, Natasha sensed her weakening. You feel it in you. Do not fight it. Feed. Sweet red blood like water in the desert. Her mouth began to water. Drink, my dear. Drink of the new life. Terry felt her fangs suddenly, the sharp points against her tongue. No, she whispered softly as she slid down the wall. She looked up and her eyes shone red. Natasha laughed in delight. You're weak, girl, but feeding will make you strong. Terry! Nick's voice was somewhere in the distance. She turned in the direction. Don't, he said. Fight it. Shut up. Tony had the girl by the hair, pulling her head back and presenting the throat area to Terry. She felt her stomach churn hungrily. Sweat popped out on her brow. The girl's throat loomed closer and closer. She could see the pulse throbbing beneath the soft, succulent flesh. Go ahead, Tony urged. Nail her. She noticed the bulge in the crotch of his pants. He was turned on at the prospect of watching her feed on this child. Sick bastard. Don't, Nick was shouting. Not like this. I told you. You shut the fuck up. Natasha's eyes blazed a deep red. She waved her hand at him in what seemed dismissal, but suddenly he made a choking sound as if something was lodged in his throat. Terry felt a new fear at the impressive demonstration of the woman's powers. At the same time, she felt herself drawn to the girl's neck. Her world was rapidly narrowing to the blood flowing beneath the soft, tender skin. All she had to do was prick it, just a scratch. She won't even feel it, she told herself. She would be gentle. She wouldn't hurt her. She'd take just a little. Oh, God, I need to taste her. She bared her fangs, turning her head sideways for a better angle of attack. As she did, she caught a glimpse of the girl's eyes. She froze. It was the same look Brandy Ross had at the funeral, a look of utter sadness, of innocence wounded. Then she remembered. She remembered these were the very monsters that had caused such sadness and grief, that had brought the pain to her friends in town. She wouldn't be a part of it. No! She screamed, jerking away. She felt her fangs retract. She threw herself back against the wall and hid her face from the room. What had she gotten herself into? At that moment, she only wanted to be a teenage girl again, back in her messy room with her mixtapes and posters on the wall, trying to decide what to wear to school tomorrow, not if someone lived or died. Natasha seemed to deflate. Rage crept into her face as she became livid. How she hated the romantics of her kind. Little bitch! I will teach you. You will submit when I'm through. But help was coming, and from the most unlikely place. Nimrod sprang from the corner as fast as his old bones could carry him. He hit Tony, catching him off guard. The big man lost his balance, toppling over like a sack of potatoes. Nimrod was able to grab the young girl and wrest her out of Tony's grip. He then stood protectively in front of both her and Terry as Natasha menacingly approached. You stupid old fool! You just dug your own grave. I won't let you harm these children. His voice trembled with uncertainty and he seemed to wilt with each step Natasha took. Even so, he held his ground. You're dead, old man. Tony stood and pulled out a switchblade. He clicked the blade open and smiled a nasty smile as he moved forward. Nimrod had been scared. As he faced certain death, the fear began to wane. He had put up with these folks, their madness and evil, for too long. It was time to go on home. He would go standing up and looking them in their insane eyes. He drew himself up to full height, stuck his chest out, and waited. The commotion was just what Nick had been waiting for. Jonathan had become distracted by the goings-on around him. As he had shifted to get a better look, his grip loosened ever so slightly. A mortal would never have detected it, but it was all Nick needed. With a move as fast as lightning, he pulled out of Jonathan's arms and came up with a left elbow to the side of the boy's face. The sound of bone crunching was sickening. As Jonathan let him go, he followed with another to the gut. The kid doubled over in pain, and Nick was loose. And then he was on Tony. He grabbed the arm that held the knife. With a vengeance, he brought it down hard over his upraised knee. Tony cried out in searing pain. The knife fell to the floor with a clatter. The power controlled him now, and he had blood in his eyes. As Tony went to the floor, shielding his head protectively, Nick scooped up the switchblade. You damn animal! You want to see blood, huh? No, please! Tony cried. He held up his hands. His eyes were wide with the same fear he had instilled in countless victims of his own through the years. Nick had him by the throat and jerked him to his feet before he knew what had happened. The shiny blade was against his carotid when Natasha shouted, That is quite enough, Nicholas! Nick's contorted face radiated with hatred. He refused to back down. He wouldn't even look at his queen. I'm going to cut your lapdog and you can watch him bleed. Maybe you will even lick it up. You really may want to reconsider. Nick froze in a millisecond, something in her voice. Slowly he turned to face Natasha. She had forced Terry to her knees. In her upraised hand, she held one of the lanterns used to light the room. In his mind, he couldn't resist calculating the odds. He knew he wouldn't be fast enough. She would light Terry up the very instant he made his decision. She smiled. She had been reading his mind. I see, for once, that discretion is the better part of valor. A wise decision. Disgusted, Nick pushed Tony away. The lackey fell to his knees, allowing himself to breathe again. Nick couldn't resist a kick into his groin. The big Italian fell over and curled into the fetal position. So much for the blood oath, Nick spat at Natasha. She shrugged. I make the rules. I can bend them. She put the lantern next to Terry's frightened face. Don't believe me? She taunted. He looked to Terry. The flame illuminated the fear in her face as she appealed to him with her eyes. All right, he gave in, dropping the knife. He nodded toward the little girl who cowered on the floor. But the child goes back. You are in no position to make demands, Nicholas, Natasha spoke sharply. Let the child go. He hesitated, taking a deep breath. And I will submit to you. I will go back to the coven peacefully. A smile of triumph crossed her face, the smug smile of someone who always wins. I thought you would see things my way. Your word. The girl goes back. She shrugged. Of course. You can see to it yourself. Just put a memory block on her. She'll think it was all just a bad dream. She glanced out the window. You'd better hurry, though. You only have a few hours till dawn. She pulled Terry to her feet. But the girl stays. Of course, Nick retorted, but then pointed his finger. But all I can say is her and Nimrod better be in one piece when I get back. She looked to Nimrod. You know the penalty for a familiar who rebels. I will answer for him. I accept his responsibility. It is not that easy, and you know it, Nicholas. She sniffed Terry's hair. The girl's innocence was intoxicating. Absolutely exquisite. She caressed the side of Terry's face, feeling herself grow aroused at the thought of corrupting her. But maybe we can work something out. Both Nick and Terry felt their skin crawl in revulsion. He grew nauseous at the thought of her exerting her influence over Terry. He knew he would rather die than that happen. He knew he would rather Terry die than that happen. But right now, he had few options. Then we understand each other. She released Terry, who ran to Nick. They embraced while he continued to face Natasha. Don't fret yourself. There has been enough excitement for tonight. Nick didn't look convinced, but he was running out of time. He looked to Nimrod and gave him a quick smile. I'm proud of you, old man, but do not ever do that again. I'm sorry, sir. I just couldn't sit back and let Stim do that. I know, but I do not know what I would do without my truest and dearest friend. Nimrod nodded in understanding and quietly exited the room. There was nothing more to be said. He turned to Terry. You know what I have to do. You will be all right. She nodded. I know. He started to move away, but she grabbed him. Thanks. She nodded toward the little girl. He smiled in acknowledgement, but said nothing. It was getting to be a crazy, mixed-up world these days. He had never been one to send food back. He knelt down to the cringing girl, holding his hand out to her. Unfortunately, she just witnessed this man in a fit of violent anger. Instinctively, she recoiled in fear. But he just smiled that smile and winked. Come on, darling. You want to go home? Her eyes still showed distress, though. She glanced around at Terry, who now knelt on both knees beside her. Go ahead, she encouraged. She removed the girl's bonds and gagged. You'll be all right, I promise. Come on, sweetness. This has all been a bad dream. When it is over, you will wake up in your own bed, I promise. Slowly he began to win her over. Timidly and ever so cautiously, she took his hand and he gently pulled her up. There, that is better. Now, what is your name, beautiful? Cindy Jo, she said in a shy whisper, her eyes still darting toward Tony and Natasha. My, that's a pretty name. So, you like to go to the fair and ride the rides? Cindy Jo nodded. But my mom says I'm too little to ride the real good rides. Well, I'm going to take you on a little ride myself. Better than any at the fair. Will Mommy be mad? He laughed. I promise she will never know. It will be our secret, okay? Okay. Cindy Joe smiled from ear to ear. This had to be something really, really fun if it was going to be a secret. He started toward the door when Natasha stepped back in front of him. Now that we have got our little inner dispute settled, tomorrow night we're going to tie up those loose ends in the town. She looked back at Terry. And then we leave this place. He looked at her and shook his head in disgust. He stepped around her and left the room without saying another word. She watched him go, an unpleasant look on her face. How I hate subversives. Then she smiled. As long as I can still break them, make good examples for others who would defy me. She turned to Terry and smiled sweetly. Well, now, let us get better acquainted, shall we? About 5:30 that morning, the vampire hunters met again, this time in Acre's office. John was also there as they plotted new strategy behind the closed doors. On Acre's desk, a large road map of the county was spread, on which Acres was pointing to different areas while he spoke. I've got my men busy looking for any vigilance that might be out on the road. An idiot with a gun and good intentions could cause us more trouble than anything else. He looked at each man. That leaves just us. He looked to Kurt and pointed at some more places on the map. Now, you hit these areas yesterday, right? Kurt nodded. Yep, we found the girl here. He pointed to the location of the old graveyard. All right. Acre spit at the spittoon. What we'll do is split up into our two groups. John and I will take this area north of West Fork. You three take the south of town. He reached back and picked up a two-way radio from the table behind his desk. Use this. I've got it set on a secure channel. I want you to check in every 30 minutes. Understood? The boys nodded. And don't get out of each other's sight. We've lost enough people already. Again he paused, letting it sink in. Now, if either of us spot anything, we call in the others. Nobody try to be a hero. Just scout it out and wait till backup arrives. Seth spoke up. Lyle said something about these things having mortal human servants or whatever that watch over them in the daytime. What do we do about them? Keep your eyes open, Acres warned. They might even have booby traps. We all have weapons. If you have to, defend yourselves. He held up a cautious finger. But whatever happens, you call for help if you run into anything. I stress that. John decided to add a little word of advice. And remember, before you start a war, my daughter's in the line of fire. The boys looked fidgety, not wanting to think of Terry and her fate. All right, Acres decided to wrap it up. Any questions? There was none. Good. Check your gear and move out. We're burning daylight, and right now, that's our most valuable asset. At that, each man began to check his weapon. Each man was now armed with a firearm of some type. Even Lyle had managed to scrounge up the .22 his father kept in the parsonage to shoot snakes. Of course, each carried a bag full of stakes, olive oil, and crucifixes. In addition, a new weapon was in the arsenal. Kurt and Lyle had stopped by a Catholic church on the way out of Mobile and filled up a couple of empty soda bottles with holy water. Remember, Edgar said as he slung his bag over his shoulder, keep in touch. Right, Seth acknowledged. We're going to start up at Friday's Chapel and work our way back. Oh, Kurt suddenly remembered. I've got to run by the office and check in with Slocum. He's probably going to fire me before this is all over with. Well, how long's that going to take? Seth was, I don't know, a half an hour maybe? Kurt shrugged. Look, I'll just meet you all at Winslow's Crossing in about 45 minutes. How's that? That'll work. We'll run up and make a few checks and then meet up with you. See you in a bit, Kurt called back as he left out. Seth turned to Lyle. Ready to kick ass? Lyle nodded in earnest. Smite the Philistine. Ho, hip and thigh. Kurt finished up at the office as quickly as humanly possible, eager to join the hunt. As he headed out of town on 179, he was suddenly struck by a strange thought. I came back to town on this road the night all this started. How easy it would be to leave the same way. Just keep driving until I run into interstate. Hit it and head north toward Birmingham or south to Florida. Maybe even east to Atlanta. It didn't matter where, just to get the hell out of West Fork and Beaufort County. Get away from this nightmare. He shook his head, angry with himself for even thinking of such a notion. But then again, was it that strange a thought? After all, he was somebody who had issues with seeing things through. Was he not? He'd been called a quitter. He'd run once before, yet it had gotten him nowhere. It would get him nowhere now. Besides, he didn't want to run. He had to save his sister. He had to save his town. He had found his destiny, or it found him. He had a life here in West Fork, a woman, a future, and friends. It was his home. My home. He smiled at that thought. It didn't feel like a curse when he thought it now. Yeah, it was his home. It had been, still was, and would be. And he'd defended against the evil that threatened it all and all he loved and cherished. He only prayed he wouldn't run out of time. Nick LaRue mustn't be allowed to escape and take his sister with him. He knew if LaRue got away, it would only be a matter of time before Terry would be lost for eternity. She would be untraceable as a wisp of smoke in a tornado. He prayed silently that would not happen. Okay, I'll keep reading. I was debating. Unfortunately, by evening, Kurt's prayers were still unanswered. At dusk, they'd all met back up at the Dairy Cream for supper. It was a tired and disappointed group. Shit, Seth said as he slid into a booth beside Lowell. I can't believe this. We've covered every graveyard in the county. All we've done is waste our time. Kurt glanced over the menu impatiently. We've got a lot to do, though, for Terry. Yeah, I understand that, but we're on the wrong path. We're getting colder. Lowell's face grew grim. Self's right. We're not moving in the right direction. We need to back up and take another look at the situation. We're missing something. From the booth behind them, Akers turned. What's this shit? I thought you were the experts. We never claimed to be that, Lowell defended the trio. Maybe we should try that horse again, Seth suggested. It worked once before. Takes too much time, Kurt replied. And we caught a new one. We're dealing with experienced ones now. Well, whatever we need to do, John, who was sitting with Akers, finally spoke. We need to do it quick. You may already be too late, Kurt said glumly. He was the one to voice the fear that the rest all had but were afraid to admit. What do you mean? John asked. Hell, LaRoe's got what he wants, and he knows we're after him. He's probably already gone. Don't talk like that, Akers interjected. We can't even think it. I'm just being realistic. Well, hell, Seth raised a clenched fist and brought it down on the table. If he's gone, fuck it. We'll follow him to the ends of the earth if we have to. Realistically, though, Lyle decided to add a logical viewpoint to Seth's rambunctiousness. Kurt's right. If we let them get out of here, we'll never catch them. Well, we can't let that happen then, John said hotly. This is my daughter, damn it. I'm trying to keep everybody thinking straight, Mr. Rogers. Lowell tried to reason. He figured this probably wouldn't be a good time to point out the fact that, depending on the circumstances, he may not want his daughter back. It's hard to think straight when some bloodsucker and punks got your daughter. John's voice rose. Calm down, John, Acre said, glancing around to see if anybody had heard. Why don't we order some food? Good idea. Seth agreed. It was time for everyone to calm down. I'm hungry. Yeah, John sighed. Ain't any need to fight and argue amongst ourselves. He looked over to Lowell. Sorry, Sam. Quite all right. Lowell knew it had to be rough for a father to go through this. Waitress, Seth flagged one of the pink uniformed girls. We're ready to order. The gum-chewing high school girl came over and pulled her pen out from behind her ear. She noticed the fatigues and hunting jackets the boys wore. A little early for deer season, she commented. Varmints, Seth gave her a curt reply. Oh, she nodded, wanting to make some kind of sly remark, but the finality of Seth's voice made her think better of it. What do you have? After they ordered and the waitress left, Kurt leaned into Lyle and said, So, what now? Lyle scratched his head. I guess we need to go back to the library and do some more research. Yeah, but most of that stuff is so vague. We need something more specific, Kurt pointed out. We know a little bit about those fuckers. We need to find a book that runs along the same lines. Kurt Rogers! A woman's voice was calling Kurt's name. Kurt looked up to see Anita, the manager, holding the phone and waving at him. It's for you! Reluctantly, he sighed and got up. Who is it? Catherine. She handed the receiver over the counter. Thanks, he said as he put it to his ear. Hello? Hey! Catherine's voice came back at him. Where you been all day? Just out. He tried to think of something quick. Working on the story? Well, I need you to do something for me. What's that? My parents are gone and my car's in the shop. I need a lift to the drugstore before it closes. For what? He asked, a little concerned. You okay? Oh, yeah, but I have to get my pills refilled if you want to be safe. Yeah. He was caught off a little off guard. Sure, I'll be by in a little bit. Well, hurry. The drugstore closes in about 15 minutes. All right, I'll be right over. Bye. I love you. Love you too. He handed the phone back and returned to the table. Seth, get mine to go and bring it home. Where are you going? Seth asked, a disappointed look on his face. I thought we'd be able to relax for a few minutes over a hot meal. Oh, hell, I gotta run and pick up Catherine. Everything all right? John asked. Yeah, Dad, everything's fine. Catherine just needs someone to give her a lift. Well, just be careful, Akers advised him. Remember, it's their domain now. I'll be all right. I'm going to stop right there. My throat, these deep voices are rough. So, if you want to find out what happened before, how Terry became a vampire, which is really interesting, I might say, and you want to... Well, hello, Miss Debbie. I was wondering when you were going to show up, and I just didn't even look up. And you want to find out how this ends. Why don't you go get the book, those of you that haven't read it? Because I know most of you out there have read that. You Rocketeers. I know how you are. I wore my J. Morgan t-shirt yesterday. Otherwise, I wasn't even thinking about it. So, it's free on KU, and I think it's $3.99 to buy it. But it's a great book, y'all. I mean, it's good. So, thank you, Miss Vincy. Yes, Miss Debbie, it is a great book. Well, thanks, Valerie. I appreciate that on the voices. Yeah, you guys are more than a little naughty. Remember, I hung out with you a little bit. I know what you guys do. Man, I was all fired up to go back down to Atlanta and have another one down there, another book signing. Vincy, I met a lot of these girls. I met Valerie, and who else did I don't think anyone else on here. Debbie's from Canada, right? So, Maggie, I didn't meet you, did I? Anyway, I bet I met to the Rocketeers down in Atlanta last year, or 2 years, in 2019. No, I'm not coming to San Antonio. I haven't heard anything about that, and I got to be within driving distance. I ain't got enough money for plane tickets, sister. And they were a lot of fun to hang out with. I'm talking crazy. But apparently the party happened the night before, and I missed it all. So, alrighty. Well, apparently they've canceled the Atlanta one for 2021, but they're going to have it in 22 from what I understand. So, I will be there. But if any of you are going to be planning to go up to the Nashville one in October, I will be there. So make sure you look me up. I'll be the one with the pink hair. And yes, this is pink, not purple or red or whatever you're saying. It's fuchsia cha. Is what it's called. Fuchsia cha. I don't know. Yes, he does, Debbie. And I love reading his books out loud because I can be myself and turn my southern charm on. And I can't wait for the Haytons in the holler? Is that what it is? Haytons in the holler? Yeah, I can't wait for that because I grew up in a holler, honey. I know that holler talk is. So, all right, everybody. Jay Morgan, when you watch this, thank you, darling, for letting me read it. Mwah. I appreciate you letting me step in at the last minute, filling it up. And I know I can't do October 1st for sure because Nashville is October the 9th. So, yeah, I definitely can't do that one. And Vincey's going to take care of posting it for you. And if one of you guys want to send it to me, I'll send a copy to Jay Morgan. Bless his heart. I got to thank him anyway. So, all right, everybody, have a good evening and a good rest of the work week tomorrow. And I will talk to you, or 2 days. Yeah, this is only Wednesday, Renee. Only Wednesday. Come back tomorrow. I'm reading Pebbles Lacasse's book, and I don't even remember which book it is now. She writes them so fast I can't keep up with them. So, y'all come back tomorrow night and listen to me read a nice, sexy, hot erotica. See what we get. All right. Y'all have a good evening and happy reading.